We've had a great mix on Unpluggered over the last few years, from current players during lockdown to past players. We've had the chance to speak to a couple of premiership players this year. We've had a chat to some celebrity fans as well. And our next guest is one of those, a presenter, a reporter and journalist with 9 News Australia, and doing some terrific work across that space. Has done MC roles at the club, be it best and fairest, and of course a passionate lifelong Sainter as well. Alicia Loxley, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thanks very much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Now we'll go back to the start of the journey, which is what we would normally do. How did the St Kilda blood, I guess, infiltrate the Loxley family?
Well, normally I say I blame my dad, but I guess with the start of the season and how well we're going, I can sort of thank Dad for leading me down this path. My Dad was from New South Wales, but he went to boarding school in Melbourne and lived in St Kilda. And so he became a passionate St Kilda supporter, and he would take my brother and I down to Moorabbin, and we would watch games from when we were, very young. And then, of course, out to Waverley, where my, memories of it were just being freezing. Stewie Lowe continually missing kicks on goal. And, a lot of disappointing results, I guess you could say. But yeah, it's been a lifelong passion. I moved over to WA and found myself on the Western Saints as a committee member. And I remember Dad came over actually for Robert Harvey's 350th game, which was an incredible win, of course, at Subiaco in enemy territory. So yeah, it's been a really long love affair that's had a fair bit of heartbreak with it as well. But there was no choice, in our household of who to go for, really. So it was the Saints all the way.
Alicia, thanks for coming on the show. When we put the call out every now and then to ask who people want to see on the show or what guests they'd like to hear from, we always got the standard, we want Plugger, we want Eric Banner, etc. But your name always comes up. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. But you talked about going to Moorabbin and Waverley and that sort of stuff. Is there any, I guess, singular memory of those days as a kid going to the footy that kind of stands out for you? Any event, any moment that you kind of think that was my time as a kid?
Oh, it's funny, at Moorabbin, I remember my brother, Dad always used to say that my brother was just busy watching birds who were sort of in the stadium, and I was always very focused on the footy, but there was also always lots of kids around, and he said I was sort of like the Pied Piper, all the kids were just running around and we were just having a great time. And I remember that, and I do remember kind of those long drives because I grew up in McLeod, which is northeastern suburbs. It's a long way from Moorabbin, it's a really long way from Waverley, and it was just a mammoth effort to get out there, but always worth it. And I remember being sort of, thrashed a couple of times. We were out there at Waverley, but a highlight was, of course, always getting out onto the ground afterwards and having a kick and ducking the footy. And it was always, no matter the result, that was always amazing. And, my dad was always not overly positive about sort of how we were going, of course, because of lived experience. But yeah, they're my memories. And as I mentioned before, I just remember Stewie Lowe always lining up for kick, and my dad just couldn't watch. He sort of had his head in his hands, and I always used to think you're being a bit rough on him, but sure enough, he would probably miss it, and then proving Dad right. But they're my sort of memories. As far as match highlights, my memory doesn't serve me too well, but I always had number 7 on my back. Nicky Winmar was my favourite player. I had an iron-on transfer. The bottom of it was always kind of flapping off, it hadn't been done properly. I was lucky that then obviously Lenny Hayes took over number 7, so he was that was a brilliant swap over. Didn't have to change the number, but yeah, I have brilliant memories. I remember Dad and I went to we went to the 95. Actually, my first grand final, I should say, was 1995, which was a big thrill, of course. Any Melburnian, all you want to do is get to a grand final. 97, somehow I'd been talked into by a friend to be part of the pre-match entertainment. So she was part of some dance school, and randomly we ended up like on the ground, you know, like I was in a Hawthorn pajama set because you just got given what you were given. We were sort of like lifting the banner and all that stuff. And they obviously don't give tickets to those kids who are out there doing the pre-match entertainment. So I ran to Jollymont Station, like got on the train, mum picked me up at McLeod, got home, and we were looking okay at half time. And then of course, Darren Jarman just like destroyed us in the second half. And so I was in tears for the rest of it. But they're my sort of, you know, I guess standout memories. The night flag was pretty exciting. I think I banged pots and pans on our front doorstep for that, obviously starved of like a lot of, you know, flag success. So that was a big moment. But yeah, they're probably the moments that stand out for me.
Follow a similar path there. Actually, 95 was the first grand final I actually went to as well. So yeah, it's a little interesting one there. But
yeah,
I was about to ask with I mean, you've told us now that Nicky Winmar was the number on the back, and you obviously knew a lot about Stewie Lowe and that. But is there any sort of players that maybe you sort of liked that maybe weren't at the top of the level, that were sort of like someone that just I guess someone who did the hard yards, you sort of like go, oh, that's a player that I kind of really liked, and or someone just a little bit out there, I guess?
Yeah, I'm trying to think whether there was anyone sort of, like, I guess it's hard when you're in primary school. Like, of course, like Tony Lockett was just a massive deal. You know, there weren't many St Kilda supporters at my primary school in Rosanna, but you know, I love Barry Hall, like watching him, and like I always loved watching Lee Montagna, and you know, got to host a best and fairest with him, which was really awesome. It was lovely to get to know him, because I love the way that he played, and that's been really great as part of my professional life, to be able to then meet these people. Of course, you know, Rui's not someone that you would say is you know, one of those players who's not a superstar. Like he's an absolute superstar, and meeting him and working with him and getting to know him, he's just, you know, as you guys know, like a terrific bloke. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like even doing the latest best and fairest, and we had to do it virtually, of course, because of COVID, and so we did it from these studios. But Max King was there, and gosh, it was really just refreshing to meet, you know, and lots of the younger players are like this, but what a lovely, like, guy he is, and so talented, and hasn't he come on this season, but just so nice to meet, you know, someone who is so unassuming and just, you know, obviously world at his feet, but certainly not reading his own press, and I think that's, you know, that's what's so great about our team at the moment, and always has been. Like, I think we've always sort of been, rather than a team with a standout individual, we've always sort of had that you know, team of wonderful players, and so hopefully that continues. Like Robert Harvey, I think, has always been you know, a massive favourite, and you know, what a standout person he is as well off the ground too.
It's amazing the symmetry that between all of the stories. My grandparents settled in St Kilda. That's how we came to be St Kilda supporters, and then they lived in McLeod for 45 years.
Oh, wow.
So quite extraordinary
Amazing.
that it sort of said it all ties that way. But you mentioned the opportunity to host Best and Fairest. Aaron and I were there in 2019, and obviously a lot's changed since then. But a really significant night. Obviously, you were hosting it, but the night had that somber mood with the tributes to Danny Frawley at the start of it, and then obviously there'd been a coaching change with Brett Ratton coming on board. I think Eric Banner was there that night as well. It kind of felt like that for you, that might have tied it all together, where it was lifelong Saints fan. Here I am hosting a function in person, and we're paying tribute to somebody who was such an important part of this club.
Oh yeah, and the mood side of stage was really, when I say somber, like it was, you know, obviously everyone was just reeling, and wanting to pay tribute to Danny Frawley and get the tone right of the night, because obviously from memory they started off with an instrumental piece, and they paid tribute to him right from the start, and it was just a real feeling of wanting to make sure that tone of the evening was right. But seeing and Stewie Lowe, I'm pretty sure, was side of stage. I'm trying to think who else was there, but you know, those closest to Danny Frawley were all standing there as they played that tribute piece, and you could just see the sadness and agony amongst that group, because what a huge loss that is. And you know, I remember, like, when you go back to that like last question about players, like, he absolutely was a favourite of mine, Danny Frawley, and yeah, it's just terribly sad, isn't it? And you could see how the club just really wanted to make sure that they paid tribute in the right way, and I think they did it really well. Like, I think those nights are often nights of celebration. Of course, when the season hasn't gone that well, often it's kind of you know, trying to also get that tone right. But with something like Danny Frawley's passing, it was it felt like a really significant evening, you know, for the club, and I think they did it really well.
The tributes to Spud aside, and yeah, I think it's always, it's tough to have those conversations around Danny Frawley. And I remember Parko that week, you and I at Moorabbin sitting in the centre circle at Moorabbin having a beer, just kind of pouring one out for Spud. And even then, like, you're hard to not get choked up and let the tears flow. But I guess outside of all that type of emotion, but do you pinch yourself that you get to be in these positions now? And obviously you've got the profile, you've got the history and the experience and the know-how and the knowledge to go out and do these things with and for the footy club?
Oh, absolutely. Like, it just feels, you know, often like a bit of a dream, really, because as you guys know, when you support a football club, it's just part of you, isn't it? Like, it just and people who don't feel that way about a football club like think that's ridiculous and don't really get it. But yeah, like, as you know, it's been like it's the love for the club makes the you know, those losses so painful, but how good is having that commitment to something? Like, life is not the same without having that, I reckon. And so people who don't get it, I think, and of course I would say this and you guys would say this, but I think they're missing out. I reckon they're missing a big gap in their lives. And so to be able to, yeah, we just had another function on Friday, like St Kilda's doing this STK business event, and they're trying to you know, make that into a really successful business networking lunch series, and it's working really well. We had Sally Capp, the Lord Mayor, there, and Ray Chamberlain, who was talking, of course, about all the dissent changes with umpiring and all that sort of stuff, which was great. But yeah, I absolutely pinch myself. It's, as I say, like, being able to work alongside people like Nick Del Santo, Lee Montagna, Rui, you know, Matt Finnis is excellent. It's a really like awesome thing to be able to do as a supporter, of course, because you know, you just love this club, and so to be able to do that sort of stuff is awesome.
Now, the other part, or I guess your main job, is reading and reporting news. Has there been any situations where there's been a story about the club and you've sort of gone, oh, I really don't want to read this, or another one where you're edging and going, I want this to be the first story of the day? Or is there any sort of stories you've been, I guess, had put upon you that you had to have reported on, and just got to try to keep that, I guess, allegiance aside to be able to read it out?
Yeah, I mean, I did a bit of sport reporting when I was in WA, and of course when you're in WA, no one cares about St Kilda. All you focus on are the Eagles and the Dockers. I remember having to sort of I'm trying to think, I don't know whether it was, I can't remember what the story was in relation to the Eagles. I remember having to sort of stalk out Subiaco and, you know, shove microphones in some of the players' faces, including Chris Judd, who wasn't that impressed with me. So when I think back to that, I'm like, oh gosh, you know, it's a tough job that some reporters have. Look, not really. Like, I think, yeah, I haven't had to do that in my reporting life, which is good. I think if I was probably in sport, that would be different. And that's where it is tricky. If you're an ambassador for a club, then you have to also report on the matters of that club, and that's where you can be a bit conflicted. But thankfully, because I'm not in that department, I haven't actually had to do that, which is a good thing, because it's just good to keep, I think, that sort of thing separate, because of course the newsroom has to report on what's happening. And so if there's a scandal, associated with the St Kilda Football Club, then that has to be reported on. But that's not an area that I get into.
Last one from me, obviously working alongside Peter Hitchener as well is another one within the St Kilda family, and I guess broadly speaking, have you been able to sort of, we seem to have more of those public profile celebrity fans than almost any other club in the competition. I know when we made the finals in 2020, I think they had yourself, the late Shane Warne, Eric Banner, these sorts of people doing photo shoots and stuff like that. So have you been able to rub shoulders with some of that, I guess, celebrity brethren, be it Warnie before he passed or Eric Banner and these sorts of people?
Surely there's a Saints celeb WhatsApp group or something.
I wish I could say there was. I actually knew Warnie quite well. We worked together on that sort of short-lived variety show that he did, Warnie, and I was sort of the roving reporter, but also female host on that. So got to know him quite well, and that's been so sad to come to terms with his loss, because what a massive loss it is, and I'm so sad for him and just so sad for his kids. And it's funny, I was thinking about him, I was thinking, God, he never got to see a flag. Like, he never got to see the Saints win a flag, and he loved our club so much. We talked about the Saints a lot when we were working on that show, because it was sort of our thing that we had in common, right? And I haven't met Eric Banner, but I love how much he's all over the club. Of course, Shane Warne. I think Shane Warne got Ed Sheeran along, didn't he, to a game not too long ago. And yeah, Pete Hitchener, of course, being a massive Saints fan. Tracy Grimshaw is a massive Saints fan, so we've got like quite a few at Channel 9. But we don't want to take anything away from, of course, all of the like absolute diehard fans, and just sort of like take any sort of attention away from people like you guys who are clearly massive St Kilda Football Club people. But it's I just love the club, and I think we do have some really great people, of course, around Molly Meldrum, and I think that reflects that it's not easy being a St Kilda Football Club supporter. It hasn't been easy, of course, now that we've got the biggest drought. But that's not what it's about. Like, it's it's funny, like when you meet people who are Saints fans, I don't know, there's like that sort of instant connection and that instant sort of feeling of like you get what it's like you don't go for that sort of easy hit of a win. So like there's a few, I guess, celebs around who support the Saints, but yeah, such a great club.
Alicia, last one from me, but we do a segment on this show called That's So St Kilda. What comes to mind when you hear the phrase "That's so St Kilda"?
Oh, that's so St Kilda. Like to win an unlosable game. I shouldn't say that, should I? That's so St Kilda. Oh, that's hard. Put me on the spot. That's so St Kilda. Oh, I don't know. What are some of the other things that people have said that might be give me some inspiration?
A classic example would be Jake Bowie being a superstar at Melbourne when his dad played 85 games for St Kilda, not 100. Yes. This week, not to spoil some that we might mention, but Melbourne getting riddled with COVID the week before they play us, not the week they actually play us. Those sorts of things. The bounce of the ball in the Milne.
Well, that is so
all
St
that
Kilda,
sort of stuff. Yeah.
Isn't it? That is so St Kilda. I was actually lucky enough to be like watching in the Channel 9 box that day, because I'd come down from Sydney for Weekend Today, done the news outside the MCG, and I was sitting in there with like Tony Jones, massive Collingwood supporter, Gary Sweet, massive Collingwood supporter. I was the only St Kilda supporter in that like group, and that's probably so St Kilda, isn't it? That we like, I didn't think that we were sort of, I didn't think we had it at all that day, but then from nowhere we were kind of like so close, and the bounce of that ball. But yeah, like it's funny, isn't it? I've gone over that a few times in my mind, but yes, they were able to sort of have it over me a week later, which was a bit of a shame. But yeah, that is so St Kilda, isn't it?
How are you at the moment with the ability to get to games? Obviously, the commitments you have and all that. Did you guys still get along to, I guess, as many games as you'd like? And how's the family with supporting the club? Have you got everyone supporting the team? And
very good question. It's a very good
Yeah.
question because it's a movable feast. I'm not sure if you guys have kids, but far out, the parents get the last say, I reckon. It's like the kids they go to school with or the next door neighbor who's 12, who's, their hero. So whoever he barracks for. But I feel like I've finally, my husband's a Dockers supporter because he's from Perth. And so we're having sort of quite a lot of success in our household at the moment. But my youngest, Ada, my daughter, she is definitely St Kilda. I think Archie, the oldest, is definitely St Kilda, but Ned is kind of wavering a bit. He's kind of heading back to the Dockers, but I reckon over the long term, I'll be okay. But the boys didn't switch to St Kilda because of me. They have a friend at school, Ollie, who goes to St Kilda, and so randomly they came home one day like, okay, we're on board with St Kilda. Getting them like Guernseys and getting them gear always helps as well. So I've finally managed to get them on board. But as far as going to the games, it's pretty difficult being the weekend newsreader because now I'm reading Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, and so I don't really get to go to many games at all. But yeah, always watching from work as much as I can, and get to the games as much as I can, but not as many as I'd like.
I was going to say, you might be lucky being up against the Dockers because it's the one team that we can say we're one up on. So
yeah, no, exactly.
Well, Alicia, your knowledge, I think, puts a lot of people to shame. You're certainly one of us in every sense of the word. Your recollection of history and things like that is incredibly impressive. So thank you very much for joining us. Go Saints, and we appreciate you sharing the journey with us tonight.
Oh, thanks, guys. And as soon as I'll hang up, I'll think of something that's so St Kilda, I'm sure. But go Saints, and what a great start to the year. They're playing really well, and let's, who knows? I said at work, actually, I was like, I'm not keeping the lid on it. I turned 40 last year, so I feel like I'm halfway. So, I'm just going to enjoy this because who knows if we might not, we probably, who knows? Anyway, I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is.
We expect there's always pain somewhere, so we'll just enjoy this until that next little
exactly.
bout.
Let's get carried away. Let's go crazy.
We'll ride the wave. Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it. Lovely to chat.